So today we will discuss about the breathing and exchange of gases. Okay, the exercise part from the question number 7. How the respiration is regulated? We know that the respiration is regulated in our body by the neural control system, and we obviously know and we are familiar with that every function that occurs in our body that is totally controlled by our biosyllabus is visual. The 3 chapters, that is 13, 14 and 17. The photosynthesis in plants, I have told you photosynthesis in higher plant, chapter 13, chapter 14 respiration in plants, and chapter 17 breathing and exchange of gases. These 3 chapters are included in your upcoming examinations. Okay, the MCQ type question will come, and obviously there may be 20 marks question, very short type of question will come in your upcoming examination. These 3 chapters. So you know that our human body, the respiration is totally controlled by the human beings have a significant ability to maintain and moderate the respiratory rhythm to suit the demands of the body tissue. Obviously our body tissue demand the oxygen, so that's why we respire, and this total respiration process is controlled by our neural system. The specialized center present in the medulla region, the brain, called the respiratory rhythm center, is the primary responsible for this regulation. So in our medulla region of the brain there is a respiratory rhythm center is present which mainly control the regulation of the respiration. So medulla region that contain the respiratory rhythm center which mainly regulate the respiration. Another center present in the pons region of the brain of this called pneumatotaxic center can moderate the function of the respiratory rhythm center. Okay, so mainly the respiratory rhythm center control our respiration, and the respiratory rhythm center is controlled by the pneumotaxic center present in the pons. So in our brain there is a two places are present, medulla and pons region. In the pons region the respiratory rhythm center is present which control the regulation, and the respiratory rhythm center is controlled by the pneumotaxic center that present in the pons region of the brain. Okay, neural signal from this center can reduce the duration of the respiration and thereby alter the respiratory rate. A chemosensitive area is situated adjacent to the rhythm center which is highly sensitive to CO2 and hydrogen. So first one the respiratory rhythm center, second one pneumotaxic center, and another one that is the chemosensitive area that present just near adjacent to the rhythm center which helps to regulate the concentration of CO2. Very sensitive, CO2 or hydrogen if present then they start their function, very sensitive to CO2 and hydrogen. Increase these substances can activate this center which in turn can signal the rhythm center to make necessary adjustment to the respiratory process by which substances can be eliminated. Receptors associated with aortic arch and carotid artery also recognize the change in CO2 and hydrogen concentration and send necessary signal to the rhythm center for remedial action. The role of oxygen in the regulation of respiratory rhythm is quite insignificant. So the role of oxygen, the oxygen is not too much involved in our respiratory rhythmic center or respiratory regulation, but mostly in our respiratory regulation is controlled by the first one, that is the respiratory rhythm center present in the medulla, that is the main rhythm respiratory regulation center. Respiratory rhythm center is controlled by the pneumotaxic center of the pons region, and beside this there is the chemosensitive area is present that is highly sensitive to two gases, that is CO2 and hydrogen. When CO2 and hydrogen becomes concentration is high, then the chemosensitive area become active and they send signal to the respiratory rhythm center for the proper action. Okay, and beside this the aortic arches and the carotid artery, okay, aortic arches and carotid artery are also involved in the regulation of the respiration. So these type of body parts are included to the respiration, mainly the brain, the neural systems, okay. Next question, question number 8. What is the effect of the PCO2 on oxygen transport? Obviously you know that just like the CO2, I have already discussed in my previous video that CO2 binding is also depend on the partial pressure of the O2, because if one gases increases, then obviously the sufficient amount of the another gases is not present, so another gases then start to increase their amount because there is the lacking of that particular gas. So just like the CO2 the binding depends on the partial pressure of the O2, same O2 binding is depending on the partial pressure of the CO2, okay. So binding of oxygen with the hemoglobin is mainly related to the partial pressure of the O2, PO2, that is partial pressure of CO2, hydrogen ion concentration and temperature. So three main: partial pressure of CO2, hydrogen ion concentration and the temperature. These three affect the other factors which can interfere with this binding. Increase the partial pressure of CO2 can increase the hemoglobin's affinity towards the oxygen and vice versa is also true, okay. So not mainly dependent on the partial pressure of the binding of O2, totally regulated, mainly regulated by the partial pressure of the CO2. Beside the partial pressure of CO2, there is hydrogen ion concentration and the temperature. Both these factors also regulate the binding of the O2 with the hemoglobin, okay. Next question, what happens to the respiratory process in a man going up a hill? When you go up to the hill, there must be the air pressure the less, so there you cannot get the sufficient oxygen that your body demands, so you can maybe suffer from a breathing problem, okay. So this is the what happens to the respiratory process when in a man going up a hill. A man going uphill has to exert more effort to climb. Obviously when they go against the forces, gravitation forces, obviously they have to give the more pressure than the normal pressure, so exert the more pressure to go uphill. And when you do any type of energetic work, your body must need the more energy, so but when you go uphill, there is the air pressure is the low, so if there is air pressure is low, your body demands the large amount of the oxygen, so how could you get that? So that's why when you go upside, there is the level of the oxygen that present in your body or with the hemoglobin that is totally used, and your body or the oxygen that present in your body that is used and the level of the oxygen decreasing, okay. So you may be suffering from a breathing problem or suffocation. So a man going uphill has to exert more effort to climb. The increase consuming oxygen, as a result the partial pressure of oxygen in the hemoglobin decrease because they totally use the oxygen of your body to climb high and high, so that's why the decreasing the partial pressure of oxygen in the hemoglobin decreases, which creates more demand for oxygen. This is compensated by an increasing breathing rate, okay. Then you can get the more, so you need more oxygen, so breathing rate can get high, so you can go fast, start to fast breathe, okay. Next question, what is the site of gaseous exchange in an insect? In an insect, you know, you can give an example of a cockroach. In an insect, you know that the respiratory system is the trachea and spiracles. Trachea is network of tubes that present the insect's body, and the spiracle is the minute pores present in the lateral side of the body. So trachea and spiracles is the main respiratory system of the any insect, okay. Insects have a network of tubes through which the air is transported within the body. These tubes are called tracheae. The tracheae open to the lateral surface to the animals through the minute pores called spiracles. Next one, define oxygen dissociation curve. Can you suggest any reason for this sigmoidal pattern? Because you know that the percentage of saturation hemoglobin with O2 is plotted against partial pressure of O2. We get a sigmoid curve. This curve is called oxygen dissociation curve. Okay, so percentage saturation of the hemoglobin with the O2 is plotted against PO2. When you made a oxygen curve, when the normal oxygen, that is the hemoglobin, the oxygen that present in the hemoglobin, and the difference between the oxygen that present in the hemoglobin and partial pressure of oxygen, these two differences create the sigmoid curve. Sigmoid curve means this S-shape curve. Now this is the question, why it is the S-shape? Because when the oxygen start to bind with the hemoglobin, that is the normal in the condition, so one by one they start to binding and they increases their affinity, they increases and they start to bind. But at the one point, the highest amount, as much as the hemoglobin can bind the oxygen can bind the hemoglobin, they're done. So that's why there is no a minute space is present for binding of the O2. So that's why then it is start to normalize, that is plated. So for this reason, this is the S-shape curved. When percentage saturation of the hemoglobin with O2 is plotted against the partial pressure of O2, we get a sigmoid curve. This curve is called oxygen dissociation curve. So oxygen sigmoid curve is also known as the oxygen dissociation curve. Oxygen has a affinity with the hemoglobin. Binding of initial molecules of oxygen is difficult, but binding of subsequent molecule become easier because they continuously binding the oxygen. So obviously demand of oxygen decreasing, then demand of another molecules binding is increasing, and this is evident by the rising trend of initial phases of sigmoid curve. Once the oxygen binding reaches its optimum level, so when the oxygen binding reaches its optimum level, then hemoglobin cannot take any more one molecule oxygen, and hence the graph shows the plateau phase. This is the reason the rest of this part. After this there is no oxygen is binding, so that's why that is the plateau in the structure. Okay, so this is up to for the today. We will continue my rest of the part in my next video. Okay, bye everyone.